And it's another Friday, 12 noon Eastern Time here on the East Coast of America. And we want to thank you for joining us for this episode of the CVC Home Service Success Network. Now, a lot more people watch this on the replays than they do on the live. We understand that. So, no matter if you're watching us live or you're watching on the replay, we want to welcome you here. We appreciate you being with us. This is presented by CVC Success Group. And the whole idea of our broadcast each and every week is to share with business owners and managers different ideas, different concepts that might just make a difference in their business. And we have a lot of different people on. Today, we've got a returning guest. I'll give you a little background on this. Our guest today is Lee Roff. He's with Lord's Chimney in Houston, Texas, who also has a remote operation going in Beaumont, Texas. And last week, Lee presented a program at the Chimney Expo in Valley Forge, King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, and it was on KPIs. So with this, he brought up and some people asked questions, and he went into where he was using remotely located CSRs dispatchers in his business. In fact, he's in Houston and he has a young lady. She's a true rock star and she lives in Orlando, Florida, and does a very, very effective job from Orlando. So somebody told Lee, said, you need to get Jerry to do a broadcast with you. And I wholeheartedly agreed because I think that the use of a remote CSR can open you up to a lot of potentials. It could open you up to people that may be handicapped and can't drive to get to work. It could open you up to people in other marketplaces. There's all kinds of benefits. And Lee's not the only person that has remote CSRs out there that are doing the job for them. I've got several clients that utilize remote CSRs in their business, and it really has been a benefit. Now, not every one of them's a winner. I got to be honest with you. Sometimes some people do fail in a remote position. It takes a certain type of person. We've got Cheryl on here, and she does the interviews for Lee, and she can kind of go through some of the questions that she may ask in an interview and how we determine that this is a suitable candidate that Lee should consider. So, Lee, let's start off with this. Tell us why you have gone to use of remote CSRs in your business, because any CSR for you is going to work remotely. So tell us more about what was your reasoning for doing this?
Originally, it was COVID and everybody went remote. That was the beginning of remote, and then it kind of worked. So when it came back to bringing people back in the office, I got asked, do we have to? And we were successfully doing it. So people stayed remote. And initially, we even brought people back for 2 days a week, 3 days a week, just to make contact. But it worked so well in remote work that we left it there just because it was efficient. They didn't have to commute back and forth to work. And for us, we get like hurricanes. We just had one. A lot of our city, no power, no internet, no phones, no nothing. And she's in Orlando, Florida, answering phones like it's nothing. So when our customers need help the most, she was there to take calls, schedule people while we deal with chaos.
Okay, got you covered. So Cheryl, let's start off with you. What would you share with us, or what would you ask Lee about the use of a remote CSR? And again, we're talking someone that's working somewhere in the United States and they are answering your phones live doing the dispatching. So what things would you share, or what questions would you ask of Lee?
Well, one thing I would share is make sure that when you're interviewing them, because it'll be done on Zoom at that time, make sure that you asked how they deal with working remote. Can they stay attentive? That they are there the same amount of hours if they worked in an office. It's not just run over to the computer when I have to. And I know Lee, that's what Lee expects. And Lee, do you want to explain how you can see what the CSRs are doing?
Sure. We use Service Titan, and I'm sure there's other softwares that work. That's just what we use. There are reports in Service Titan where you can see every keystroke of employees. So that when I would log on and look for large periods with no keystrokes and just ask questions. Sometimes there's a logical question. Maybe it's another software they're working on a project, or Maybe they're sick and have to go drop a kid off or something else. There's always a reason. But you can see when they're not inside that software actively working. So it's an easy way of sort of seeing. You can also look at how many phone calls have come in, how many they took, what their average call length was, to see how much time other than phone calls did they have, and what did they do with that time.
Okay. Does that make sense to you, Cheryl? Anything else?
No, that was what I was wanting him to get to, because I'm sure we're going to have people on here that are prospectively thinking about using CSRs. Like Lee knows, you can't feel them, you can't touch them, so you don't see them. So are there ways you can help yourself feel more at ease with doing remote? Was where I was going with that.
We set up Zoom meetings, like especially when we have new people in our office. We'll have a Zoom meeting that goes all day long. So literally you're looking on a screen, you're seeing them, and then you're taking a call on another screen. So literally you can almost listen. It's almost like you're in the same office. It's not the same as being in the same office, because that's one of the drawbacks, is there's not times to rub elbows and kind of I would say it's like Charlie's Angels. If maybe I'm showing my age. It's someone talking in a box, and you never really see them except for Zoom meetings and stuff like that. But more and more we're getting used to it. And I can even say when we first in COVID went remote, some of the standard office people that were used to coming in the office did not work. So we had we eventually got Millie, who then worked extraordinarily well. But we had people who sort of worked in our office that when we went remote, it magnified every flaw and they got a lot worse.
Okay. So Cheryl, how do you spot that in the interview process? How can you eliminate that person? What's the questions you would ask to find out? Is this a person that can work alone, or is this person that needs other people around them?
I like to know, if they're talking to me, I like to know that they're concentrating on me on the Zoom. And the reason I say that is if they're sitting there bobbling their head while I'm talking to them on Zoom, it's a pretty active thing that they've got things going on in the background that's taking their attention away. And sometimes it's just an off the hip call. It's not like we haven't made mistakes in this, but you try the best you can. You ask the questions. How do you keep yourself motivated of a day? How do you deal with the stress of what goes on behind you? It's things you just need to know. And if they have children, you need to, hopefully they will share. I can't ask, but hopefully they'll share that they have a caretaker that's there with them taking care of their children.
Got you covered. So Noah, let's swing over to you. You know, people in your age bracket, they love to be around other people. They love to hang out at Starbucks and all this kind of stuff. So what would you ask Lee about having a remote CSR?
There we go. Sorry. Yeah, my question is regarding hardware. I know some companies that are more like massively remote will provide laptops, stuff like that. So my question is kind of a two-parter. First of all, are these remote CSRs you're hiring, are they providing their own equipment, or are you providing that? And then if they are providing their own equipment, let's say, they're using, the calls are going to their phones. If their phone stops working, something like that, what is the process or like the liability on either side, or like how do you combat that?
We provide a laptop and a headset. We've hired people before that have like a gaming setup with 3 screens and headphones and everything else, and they prefer to use their stuff, which is fine. It's all web-based, all of our software. So technically they could take that laptop to the beach, and as long as they're answering calls, I don't even know. And honestly, I don't care. If you're taking a vacation, but you're on a cruise ship and you have good Wi-Fi, you would be fine as long as you can do the job. I don't get nitpicky with it. We have our phones run through Service Titan. So we use Phones Pro and Service Titan, but they're all web-based. It's like a dial pad based thing. So through their laptop is what the phones work. So we don't have to worry about their cell phones or anything else. It all works through the whole computer.
Got it. Cool. And then, so if, let's say their laptop that you're provided has a problem, if they are going that route, they're kind of out of work for a while. If that's their only, I guess, tool to use there, what would the process be there?
Find another computer.
Okay.
Most of the time they have their own, or go somewhere that does. Go to a friend that does. You know, make this happen. I've had some people who are at Starbucks all day long. You know, and now with the noise canceling headphones and everything else, you can successfully do that all day long. And as long as the customers don't know, and I know, and you get your job done, I'm not picky with it. As long as you know, as soon as you're not getting the job done and you're not answering the phones, you're going to start to get micromanaged more. Questions are going to be asked, but as long as you can get your stuff done, I don't sweat.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's so cool that we really do just have the resources to be a remote CSR. I mean, pretty much everyone has a laptop, like you said. So that's really cool. And yeah, great. Thank you.
Fantastic. Josh, what about you? What kind of questions would you hit Lee with today?
So mine are going to be, sort of specific to training.
Mm-hmm.
Or how are you training them beyond the Zoom? Do you have obviously they're not able to do ride-alongs, I take it, right? Things like that.
Most of the technicians or CSRs that we hire are in Houston. They just work remote.
Okay.
So even Millie, who's now in Orlando, started in Houston. So they all started with a week inside the office with me. I always say, proper brainwashing is required. So we do Chimneys 101. I turned this 6-hour class into a week-long class. So when we talk about smoke chambers, we have a training center. We go out and look at a smoke chamber. When we talk about caps and dampers, we go out and look at caps and dampers. They also do at least one ride-along in that week just to go out and see what they're actually talking about. So we have yet to train somebody in a different state or who's not in our city who doesn't show up at our facility. We could, but it would be sort of a Zoom share screen video thing. But especially when I have someone I don't know, I like to have them for a week to look them eye to eye and kind of filter out. One of the things that I do that Cheryl doesn't know is when I'm playing these videos, I'll step out of the room and let the video end and see how long it takes them to come find me. If they sit there and stare at a blank screen for a long time, that's probably not a good remote candidate because they're not actively, they're trying just to sit there and do nothing. What you want in a remote CSR or anybody working remote is someone when it ends to start looking like, what do I need to do? I need to be productive. I don't need to just sit. So that's one of the tests I run on people is I let that video end and I see how long it takes for them to go ask somebody what's next. Now all my employees know I do that on purpose. They've never seen that before.
Because I know we discussed this Saturday or Friday, but your market is ginormous. It's bigger than what Connecticut.
It's about the size of Connecticut, and that's just Houston, not Beaumont, by the way.
Yeah, but that's 3 hours in any direction, right? You have to cover. So, if you have a CSR, are you paying for like a hotel or anything like that for the week?
Like I said, we've only trained people who live in Houston.
I know, but that could be 3 to 6 hours away, depending on.
Yep. And they know we're just very clear up front that they're going to have to, we just hired a lady yesterday who's going to start training, hopefully once she passes the drug test and background check. But she's coming from the Woodlands, which is the north side of town. It's an hour and a half to get to our office.
Okay.
And she was excited because our morning meeting for our guys, which you have to be there, is 7:00. And starting that early means she avoids all the traffic. And the fact that she would get off at 3 means she avoids all the traffic on the way back. So that's probably going to save her, an hour and a half round trip just in traffic.
Okay.
So yes. And I've never done it. We could easily do a lot of this via Zoom and just share a screen and watch some videos, but there's something to put your hands on. It's something to actually see. It's something to have lunch with them every day.
That's a big thing with my wife. When the Navy went to remote, she's always saying that's how you meet people. That's how you get to know their little idiosyncrasies. And for her, she said when they went 100% remote, she had all these relationships that are just super important for job promotions and things like that too. And you get that feel for that person. You can learn, about their family and that sort of stuff.
Yep. And if you're in Houston and working remote for us, you can come in and work on our computers or bring your laptop in anytime you want. I don't mind as long as you do your job. So if you need that, bring it in. Now, what you'll find out is because everybody's remote, all our technicians come in, get in their trucks and leave. So besides our fabrication shop, it's a pretty lonely place.
Yeah, they're not sitting there shooting the shit.
No, they're not, because they're there basically by themselves. But if they need to get away from kids or dogs or just need to get out of the house, they're more than welcome to show up. I mean, that's not allowed. So it's up to them what they like to do, how they like to live, and we talk about it all the time.
Okay. Josh, before we started the broadcast, you were asking about taxes. You want to go into that, about if somebody's located in another state, how you deal with taxes?
Well, you just asked the question.
I can answer that real quick. We do a payroll service. We use Paychecks. So I just turn it over to them and they deal with it. So they know the addresses, they know the zip codes. That's an HR person. Yes, you pay for it, but it takes that whole variable out of the equation.
Okay. So that's not a complicated matter.
As long as you pay someone to do it for you, no.
Okay. Got it. So Lee, I was talking to another client of mine this morning that Cheryl also does hiring for, and he's got a CSR right now that doesn't seem to be working out. So I asked him today about has he thought any more about using a remote CSR, and he said he would, but the only way he would do it would be if that person came there and spent 2 weeks in their business so that they could understand what the business does and how it does it. Would you agree with what he's saying?
I mean, I do a week. I think that's a better way. Yes. Do I think you could do it without that with the correct person? Yes. It still feels weird to me to hire someone you've never met in person, to train someone you've never met in person, and never see them. That still feels weird. I'm not saying it's wrong or anything else. It just feels strange to me. Maybe it's because I'm old. So for us, we've always brought them in. We've always had that. Even Millie, we had our SWAT a month ago or so. She flew in, was there at our SWAT because it was important to her to be there to see them. And then she flew back. So there's some benefit to having them there if you can. Yeah, I would. But what we found is our market area is so big, or any market area, that you can have someone who comes in for training but still is remote in your market area.
Okay. So Lee, you said you're using ServiceTitan. So how important is having a good web-based software to pull this off?
I don't know how you would do it without it, honestly. ServiceTitan just works. Now, you have to set it up correctly. You have to use people like Noah. That didn't exist. I had Josh to give me a hard time when I first started setting up. But now that there's Josh and Noah and everybody else to help you, it's easier to get some of this stuff set up. But once it's set up, it's actually easy. The office side is not that hard once it's set up correctly. The field side is not that hard. Just setting it up is hard. But if you don't have a web-based thing, I don't know how you do it, honestly, at all.
Got you covered. So you just said it. So let me change thrust here just a minute. You're talking about how important it is to have someone help you set up this software, which I firmly agree with. So many people have tried to set up a complicated software such as ServiceTitan, which is definitely not a plug-and-play software that requires a lot. So how important is it that you get this kind of help to get your software where it's performing properly?
It will definitely save you some headaches. I did it myself with a little bit of help from Josh, but mostly by myself. It took about a year to really get it right. Because it's not a full-time venture. You can't, and you don't have any experience. It's like being a new technician. It takes a while to get some of the experiences underneath your belt to be efficient. So I was totally inefficient, and it took a long time. So getting help is like a cheat code. It will move you forward a lot faster, remove the frustration. That's what I would do now if I had to start all over again, but that just wasn't available then.
Got you covered. Understand. So Cheryl, anything that you would ask Lee, anything further beyond what we've talked about?
Okay, Lee, you told me you trick about leaving it. Are there other things that make you more confident when you're going in with a new person? I know we've had some good people. We've had a few failures. That's just the way it happens. But what are some things that you've learned over the time doing it this way?
When you're looking at people, look at people who are kind of people pleasers. You want somebody who's constantly, they don't like to sit still. They have to be self-motivated. They have to be accountable too, because all my people know their numbers. They know how many calls they've taken. They know their close rate. They know all that stuff, because you have to know, because I'll even call them and ask, how many calls did you take today? And if they've worked 8 hours and they've taken 2 calls, and I'm exaggerating a little bit, what else did you do? Because they need to justify their job. So I've always put that out from the beginning of, I'm more than happy to not micromanage you at all, let you be remote, but we still expect results. We're relying upon you. So you need to be able to justify what you did with your time, even if it's sitting down. I had one lady who didn't work out, but I had her go in a planner and write in 15-minute blocks what she did all day, because I couldn't justify it. So when it came time to present that, she didn't do it at all. So you're starting to go down a road that you know what's going to happen.
Okay.
So
that brings up an interesting question. What else do these remote workers do for you besides answer the phone and dispatch work?
They work on we have a quarterly newsletter. They work on that. They do the accounting stuff. They work on some payroll stuff. They do accounts payable. Every single one of them has their own skill set. Like the lady I just hired is a social media person. So ideally, maybe eventually, she's doing some of the social media stuff for us as well. But there has to be something besides just answering phones. Otherwise, you're going to get what we got early, which is I'm watching TV and answering phones. When the phones don't ring, I watch TV. That's a bad gig. So you want the people who are constantly looking for responsibilities and are asking you, I don't have enough to do. What do I do? What do I do? And then you just fill their days. And especially Millie, she's always talking to me about taking stuff off my plate, always. And that's what you want. When you have people who talk like that, you're in the right mode. You're in the right success work area.
Okay. Cheryl, anything else you would ask Lee?
No, just we're continually looking. Lee, we've discussed before leaving the CSR add up as well as our technicians. Do you still believe in that?
Absolutely. I think you constantly have to look. You never know. You always have to have a like every sports team has a bench. So you need to have a game plan. What if this person leaves? No one person can be essential, including me. We talk about it in our SWAT all the time. What if I die? What are we doing? What's the game plan? So everybody's got to have a game plan of what happens. I even found this is a technician thing, not a remote CSR. We have a lot of people who will ride along, just technicians. It's kind of like the last interview process, they ride along. Having those people cycle through where my technicians see people who are there actively wanting their job, not that they're taking it from them, but it makes them feel like their jobs are valuable.
So the ride-alongs are very important to your company, I know.
Absolutely. Even if we're not hiring, having people ride along just to see what's out there, just to see what options we have. And the more interviews you do, this is something I've learned over the years. The more interviews you do, the more ride-alongs, the more people you hire, the better your gut feeling and your sixth sense gets as far as, is this person going to work? Because we're a lot better now on when people show up who are not a good fit, we bail a whole lot faster than we used to. I used to take pride in making people work, that I could coach people up and make people work. We don't do that as much anymore. If you're not a good fit, we find somebody else who is a good fit.
Okay. Good enough. So Noah, what else would you ask Lee today, brother?
For sure. I did want to add to your guys' conversation earlier. I think another important part that you talked about a little bit of just having someone to help you with that Service Titan aspect is that Service Titan is so good in the fact that they have video resources for everything, but hopefully you can atone to this, Lee. I think having someone for that can help you with needs specific to your company, because it is so flexible in what it can do. And we know that Service Titan isn't natively built for the chimney industry, can be so critical. I've had so many clients that I've talked to that have just been why doesn't it do this for us? And it's not made for us, but we make it work for us. And it can be so powerful if you know what to do correctly. But anyways, my question, so I'm curious, you've talked, obviously there's some different regulations with remote CSRs in terms of you're tracking what they're doing keystroke wise and everything. Is there like your baseline workspace regulations, right, that you have to hold within the office. Do you have a different set of rules specifically for remote CSRs? So I guess I'm just thinking like, and I don't know if this happens, but like workplace conflict, for example, or if, you know, the remote CSRs are communicating and something happens there, like what is the process or the guideline for that? Because I feel like it's a lot harder to handle that being remote, even if it is a Zoom meeting, right? I think we can all agree that being in person for those types of things usually goes over a lot better.
We have not necessarily, or I'm not aware, let me rephrase that, because I'm not always everywhere at all times. But we have not had a whole lot of issues with it. Millie deals with some of that. They generally have, even when we had 3 people in our office, we had a Zoom meeting with all 3 all day long. It was just a screen. And that's the way you interacted with your fellow office people. Like, hey, can you take this one that just happened? So we were able to deal with most issues that way. Could they have some conflicts of personalities? I think that's what you're kind of asking. Sure, we deal with it just like we deal with anything else. It's never perfect. It's always kind of sloppy. But that's what personalities are. I'm not sure. It was sloppy when we were in the office too. People got their feelings hurt, and that just the way the world works.
For sure. Do you think, like, looking back, if you could have started completely remote, because in my head, like, I'm thinking like, wow, you could have like less office space because you wouldn't need this, maybe it'd be cheaper like monthly. Do you think you would start, if you started over, you would go completely remote starting off?
I would. And we moved facilities. We bought a facility, and I got rid of like 80% of the office. So we did that. I mean, now we still have an office where a person or 2 we could make it work. But our office now is not made to have an office there.
Gotcha.
So we did exactly what you said, is we kind of exchanged office space for warehouse space so we could do the fabrication shop. And we have more of that now instead of office.
Cool. That's really awesome. Thank you.
Josh, what about you, brother?
Well, I was just going to follow up on that office space thing because, you know, we have a lot of big government facilities and organizations like that. And actually, my whole office was supplied by AARP. That, you know, office space is overhead and it's an expense. AARP decided they would save $3 million a year just in rent if they weren't remote, and they went remote super quick because of it. And I bought a lot of office furniture for pennies on the dollar. So anytime you don't have to have that office space, especially like when we had the retail store, that's just wasted space you could use for retail, or like Lee's making productive space with it, with the use of the fabrication shop.
Okay.
So
It's not really, otherwise you have just empty rooms that do nothing.
yeah.
Well, with Lee's operation at this point, there is nowhere, be honest with you, trying to put the CSRs into your building at this point, Lee, I think would be a real problem for you if you tried to do it. I mean, the room's not there. That is a production facility now. It is not an office facility. In fact, where's your office at, Lee?
Home and mobile. So I work from home a bunch. I have a sort of a mock recording studio in my house, but I work from home a lot because I was trying to work at the office. There's nobody there. It's a very lonely place. So I was like, I'm basically working remote too. So I go in, I do my morning meeting, we do training. If I have a new person, I do training there all day long. But once all that stuff and everybody's gone and everybody's in their groove, I go back to my home office and I work from there.
Got you covered. That's what I mean. So, Lee, here's a question for you. Let's say that someone from another state, far away, was a contact through your ads and put in an application, and you see on there that they have 5 to 10 years working as a CSR in the chimney service industry. What would be your process with this person to utilize them?
Number one, talk to them, because I don't care what you know. If you're not a good cultural fit, it does not work. They have to be online with our values and the way we do things. Talk to them. We always do basically Chimneys 101. I would do that with them, ask them questions, figure out what their knowledge is. It also depends where they come from, because the ServiceTitan thing's easy to teach. Honestly, you watch a couple of videos and it doesn't take long. I mean, when I say you watch a Service Titan video, a lot of their initial training videos are less than 5 minutes on like how to book a call. It's easy. In fact, our fabrication person actually answers phones sometimes in emergency situations. So, and that is not his gig. But when Millie's on vacation and we don't have anybody else, guess what? He answers phones. He does just fine. But we could do remote training. We could do all that stuff. I have never done it before, but I don't see any reason we couldn't.
Okay. That's what I was wondering. Somebody came to you experience. Like I've got one client who has hired a remote CSR who he has several, and she is now the most outstanding one that he has that she had worked in the industry for someone else. And she's a true rock star. But she had the field experience both with Chimneys and with Service Titan to come in that she was rolling on day one. Could you follow that path, or you would still go through the Chimneys 101 with them?
I would probably go through Chimneys 101, not just for the Chimney experience to see what they know, but also there's something to spending some time with somebody. And if you can't do it in person and kind of getting a vibe. So I know who they are. I know what they believe in. We need to sort of bond. Like I said, brainwashing is required. And I'm saying that kind of funny, but we need to get on the same page. They need to trust me. They need to know what my intentions are. It can't just be totally transactional in my world.
Right. And how important do you think it is when you have your swap meet annually that Millie come in for that swap meeting?
This is the first time we've done it because it's the first time she's been gone since that, but it makes a huge difference for my technicians to see her in person and understand she's a real person. You know, she's not just a person on a screen or a voice. They all know her because she started with us here, but I think it makes a huge difference just in relationships.
Yeah, because everybody in your company does have a super relationship with Millie. They do. I know I took her back to the airport when I was leaving the swap meeting. I dropped her off at the airport when I went to the airport. And she's very, very happy working for you. She's very happy working remote. She's very happy working with all the team members there. So go back to room. Cheryl, you got anything further to add?
I'd just like to find a few more like her.
I'd agree with that. Noah, you got anything else you want to add?
I'm good. This was very informational.
There you go. Josh, what about you, brother? Well, there you go. So, Lee, from this conversation, utilization of a remote CSR is something that can help the business. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. It's another tool in the tool chest. Even if you have everybody in the office, having someone be able to work from home for 1 day, 2 days, start off with 1 day a week, see if it works for you. Try it out. If it doesn't work, bring them back in. But having that as an option, I think, is a real gift and tool.
Yeah, well, like I said, you figured it out during COVID when all of a sudden we got shut down and you had to do this because of the government regulations, everything else. You went to this. You probably came out of your comfort zone a little bit when you did it. Then you found out it worked. And so have you had some failures, Lee?
Yes. We lost 2 of our long-term people when we first did it.
Okay. So you have had failures. Have you hired people that didn't work out in this position?
Yes, that's true. When that office people too in the office.
That's what I mean.
But yes, we have.
Yeah, any part of your business, you're going to hire people at times that you're going to have to terminate out. They're just not going to work out. They're not going to fit the culture. They're not going to fit the work environment. They're going to fit anything else. So anyway, well, Lee, hey man, I appreciate you taking a little time out of your day for us today. Appreciate you sharing it. And like I said last week, you did an excellent presentation on KPIs. And you answered a lot of questions. That's where this came up. So I want to thank you for joining us today, brother. And with that, we'll end this episode of the CVC Home Service Success Network. Reach out to us here. We've got great ideas. We'll help you get yourself to where you want to go. Sometimes it just helps to have a little push to make it. And we're pretty good at pushing. That's one of the things we do. Been an expert pusher over the years. You know, Noah, you grinned right there when I said that. But anyway, appreciate you joining us. We'll see you next week on our next episode of the CVC Home Service Success Network. Appreciate you being here. It's an honor. It's a privilege.